afternoon, everyone. Greetings from a little bit dreary and not as sunny as normal California, San Jose, California. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jeffrey Benson. I am the Director of Choirs at San Jose State University and the current president of the California Choral Directors Association. And it's really fantastic to have you all join us today. I want to introduce our amazing panel. Today's discussion, we call it a panel discussion, but it's going to be a little bit more informal than a panel because sometimes we don't always love the one person talks for 10 minutes and then now it moves on. So we want to have a little bit more of an organic discussion, but we are calling this Now What? Focusing on what we can do. And I'm honored to introduce you to Dr. Ethan Sperry from Portland State University, Dr. Kellery Dower, the Dean of the Fine and Performing Arts Division at Santa Ana College, Dr. Arlie Longager from Miracosta College near San Diego, and Dr. Buddy James from California State University at East Bay. And we had a wonderful conversation this past weekend. I know many of us have been pretty down in the dumps after seeing last Tuesday's webinar that NATS and ACDA and Chorus America and the Barbershop Harmony Society provided for us. And we, after coming out of that maybe day or two or three of grieving, we really decided at CCDA and with this panel discussion that we wanted to think about what can we do moving forward. And so in our conversation on Saturday to prepare for you all, we talked mostly about two prongs to think about for the future, for this summer and this fall for sure, and maybe early into 2021 as well. We want to talk about advocating for ourselves, for our programs, and for our students, the advocacy that it's going to take for us in our own schools, in our own community choirs, in our own churches, as well as with our administrators, as well as with our students and our parents. That advocacy is absolutely critical right now. We can sit here and we can think about all the things that we can't do, and we can get pretty down about that. But what we can do is a lot. We can still create communities. We can still create some music, even virtually, but we can create all kinds of wonderful conversations with our students and with our singers from age 3 all the way to age 100. And we can communicate that to our parents and to our administrators in really positive ways. We are creative, brilliant people in this room today and in the United States choral community. And there's a lot we can do. So in addition to advocacy, we also want to talk to you about some specific goals that we have and ways that we can be creative in our classrooms and our community choirs and our church choirs so that our people can continue to sing, can continue to grow musically, can continue to feel connected. Part of CCDA's mission is to connect the choral communities, the diverse choral communities in this great state, and now beyond through this amazing medium that is Zoom. I know many of us are thrilled about the connections we're able to make with family and friends that we maybe don't get a chance to talk to. That's certainly a huge positive that's come out of this quarantine for many of us. And so I just think that there's a lot of positive that we can do. And I know that this committee is, this panel discussion rather, is really excited to talk to us about that. Dr. Dower is gonna give us the perspective of the administrator. She is a choral conductor herself and has been wearing the dean hat and the administrator hat. So she's got a lot of great ideas about how to talk with our administrators. Dr. James is also the chair of his department at Cal State East Bay and has some ideas as both current practitioner as well as administrator. Buddy, did you want to start with some thoughts about how we're going to pivot and not panic?
Sure. Thanks, Jeffrey, and hi, everyone. It's a crazy time, but we're incredibly lucky to be able to stay connected like this. I can think back to 15 years ago when I lived in a small apartment and didn't have internet in the apartment. And I just think back, what would I have done if this happened back then? And luckily we can still reach out and, like Jeffrey said, make connections that we haven't been making regularly. I know a lot of people have made those connections. And one of the things that I have seen as a recurring theme is people wondering what they're going to do now. And I feel the same sort of anxiety for a lot of reasons. People are worried about what's going to happen to their programs, what's going to happen to their jobs, what's going to happen to the students that don't get the training for a couple of years, or the churches that don't get the live music. And one of the first things that I do when I teach choral methods, a class for our secondary and primary choral students, is I ask them to come up with their personal mission statement. And it's something that I refer to regularly, both because of the class, and I try to refer to it at the beginning of the year. I actually, when we have department meetings, I start every single department meeting by showing the department's mission statement. And I always say, make sure that what you're doing fits within the mission statement. And for me, I'm always asking myself, is what I'm doing right now fitting within my personal mission statement? Because when things get rough, as they do, when the seas become stormy, we have to go back to why we do what we do. And I'm going to read to you really quickly my personal mission statement. And it hasn't changed much over the years. That might be a failing of mine. You should revisit it regularly, but mine has stayed pretty consistent. My mission is to encourage and enable my students to positively and dramatically impact the lives of others through music. And if I sit and I dwell on the fact that I might not have choir the way I normally would, I'm going to get down. But when I look at my mission statement, I can honestly say that there are many things that I can do and deliver to my students next year that will fulfill my personal mission statement. And I know almost every one of you out there, your number one mission is not to put a great concert on. It's to impact the lives of others, and I think we can still do that. And so I encourage you all to revisit why you're doing what you're doing. And if you haven't figured that out, or if you haven't visited in a while, take the time to do it, because it really provides a grounding in a turbulent time. The only other thing that I would add to that, to kind of start off this talk, is I've had a chance to observe a couple of different rehearsals of virtual choirs and virtual choral rehearsals, not the finished product, but actual rehearsals. And I've been skeptical, and I think that as we talk about building our programs into the future, one of the things that we really need to focus on is how we're going to convince our current singers to stay with us through this transition. And in the most successful online virtual rehearsals, I saw two elements that made me really stop and think not only about how I would handle things virtually, but in my own choral rehearsals. And the first is, I ask myself why the students want to be there. What's the motivation? And we know in our choirs there are many things that motivate us. It might be the teacher, it might be the music, it might be the person sitting across the room who we want to get to know better. But there's a motivation for every singer, and we need to identify what that motivation is and what we can offer those singers going forward, because there's something there that they need. And I don't need to spell it out. Some of my colleagues are going to talk about some of that motivation, but you all know what your students need, and you can still give it to them. And then the other thing is finding a way to personalize the instruction. Everyone wants to be recognized in a rehearsal and in a setting, and when the virtual choirs that I saw failed, it was because the individuals didn't have their own space. So I'm thinking a lot about how to do that as I go forward. But there is a path. There is a path.
Buddy, I love this idea of messaging. How are we going to move forward on the advocacy prong for everyone here? How are we moving ahead in terms of advocating to at least sort of in our own little worlds first and foremost? Kelly, do you want to take that, or Arlie, or?
I can take it. I was going to talk more about the 30,000 feet in the air, but I can certainly talk a little bit more about that. And I think part of the response could be that you work more closely and model more of the collaboration that we talk about in our classroom. We talk about the skills that students learn from us. This is a good time to model it. So maybe you talk to, the athletic director, because they're probably going through similar things, or Avid, or someone else on campus that might be feeling like you're feeling, and find ways to help each other tell the story. And I think there's a lot of strength in numbers, and there's a lot of strength in camaraderie and what you have in common.
Yeah, I think the messaging is really important right now, and Trish Adams from CMEA just shared that CMEA is pulling together a coalition of folks who we're going to try to kind of all come together and have a call to action, and that's going to be coming out in the next week or so. And I know that Ethan's got some ideas about calling students and their parents to help us and use those folks who really want us to be back in the classrooms in some way virtually.
Yeah. Is this a good time for me to share my little screen outline thing?
That's great.
And thanks for having me here today. I used to work in California, actually at Santa Ana College, amongst other places, where Kellery is now, and I'm only one state away. I was really alarmed after the webinar last week, because even though the science clearly shows that singing will spread the virus, it didn't in any way convince me that it's much more dangerous than being in any other classroom. There's still a lot of variables, but I think if we put a lot of people in a room together and one of them is sick, the primary thing that's going to spread the disease is actually the ventilation system inside the room, and not actually the activity that's taking place. I do think that webinar was dangerous because it presented our activity without comparing it to any others. And I think that's really important for our schools to think about it. And in fact, both of the doctors mentioned that on the webinar, but it wasn't the takeaway bullet point, that schools with old ventilation systems really shouldn't reopen in the same way as ones with more modern systems. So I really think it's important we not see ourselves in a vacuum as being the only activity that spreads the virus. And in certain schools, singing may spread it a little more effectively, but like, I don't know if I want to go there. And I put up one question on my Facebook this morning, and most of the other university directors in Oregon and Washington did too. We have a one-question survey that went up this morning, and I've got over 100 responses to it already that I haven't had time to read. But I'm just trying to, instead of every school doing their own letter writing campaign to administrators about why choir is important, we're just asking, how has choir or music classes in general gotten you or your children through the last 3 months? How has that been through the different from other classes? So it's trying to collect that information. But until then, here's my little tagline that I have so far. And I don't mean to make this people feel bad, but yeah, don't despair. I don't think this is over in any way. Don't give up, and don't let yourself get fired. And by that I mean don't feel bad if your school decides to axe the arts. But I don't think we should use the webinar to just roll over and say, yeah, you're right, choir is dangerous. Let's get rid of that and not worry about any other subjects. Like, let's not go peacefully down this. I think many of us already have wonderful supportive administrators who are going to work with us to try and make sure the arts stay strong. Some administrators continuously need to be convinced of the value of arts classes. That has always been true in America, and it kind of sucks that we always have to be our own advocates, or often have to be our own advocates, but that comes with the package of being a music teacher, and I'm not afraid of that. I really believe in the product that we have. Even though these ideas seem sort of hippie to some people, there's so many benefits. NAFME and Chorus America have statistics on their website, but it's not just about putting on a concert. Music creates community. That community at this moment is providing so much mental health benefits for our students. Having that outlet. I have had full Zoom rehearsals where my students do nothing other than just talk about where they are in their mental health thing and receive support from each other, and just know they have a safe space to vent about how much of a struggle this is. They're not going to be able to do that the same way in their other classes. Music teaches creativity. That's important. There's all the cognitive benefits. We all know the studies that students that study music do better in their other classes. This was true before COVID. It's still true now. Our classes are the reason why many students stay in school. They learn listening skills and communication skills. It's a place where they can actually have personal expression and feel heard. There's all the interdisciplinary knowledge. And at its core level, if you want to go this far down, music class really teaches us what it means to be human at a very basic level, especially choir class with the kinds of texts that we sing. It's really important stuff. And we may have to do a refresher course about that with the people in our community. But the second part is the administrator who already believes all this, but thinks that once the ensemble isn't there, it can't be taught anyway. Well, I believe in music, but if you can't do choir and band, are we still going to be able to have that? And then we need to have the list of tools. We can still teach music literacy and sight singing. We can still teach composition and arranging. Maybe we can have chamber ensembles. Maybe it's music appreciation. Maybe we can teach studio musicianship skills. I've been doing a lot of that with all the kinds of apps that are available online. Virtual ensemble projects. Students have a chance to craft their own learning based on their own interests at this moment. That's true in so many other subjects. It's true on ours. But a thing that's going to be something really important for an administrator who loves choir is we don't need to reinvent this. We just need to create a bridge for our communities until ensemble comes back. We just need to get through the next 18 months. If they believed in choir before, don't let everything disintegrate. It'll still be waiting for us at the end of those 18 months. I think for the adult choirs, it's going to be a little trickier in community groups and church groups. But those are just sort of my bullet points. I'm hoping to flesh them out more. But I think it's really important that, as we said, we don't panic, we pivot, and we be ready to validate our own existence.
Arlie, you were going to continue that thought, I think, a little bit with what we're doing down in Southern California.
Yeah, I think for some of us, we've moved already into, for my college, Miracosta College, we've already made a decision that we're going to offer fully online courses for the fall. And to be honest, that was a little bit shocking when we first heard that. But it is interesting that as I step back and kind of zoom out, it's given me some energy because I'm not spending my creative energy on worrying. Now I'm putting my creative energy on, okay, what does my curriculum ask? What is my what does my student need? All of us educators, you know, outside of some of our professional choirs and community choirs exist to develop critical thinking skills as well as musicianship skills. And that's something that comes really as a byproduct of great rehearsal technique. But if we step back and even look at our curriculum, we can really get a sense of this is something that we can approach from other ends. For those of you who have been forced to dive into your curriculum lately, either because you've had to defend distance education modifications or that sort of thing, you've probably, like me, seen line items that are along the lines of demonstrates an understanding of excellent choral tone. Well, that may have been an unintentional mistake, but demonstrating the understanding or the appreciation of choral tone is different than standing on a stage in front of paying customers, if you will, audience, to demonstrate that. So I've actually found some liberation and some creativity by zooming out and taking a look at that. I know that many of us, and everybody's spoken sort of to it of sort of what we're grabbing to reach to try to promote or defend the programs that we're bringing to our administrations. They are still looking for a product, and our students still want to feel the satisfaction, as they have in choir before, of working together on a project to have an outcome. For some of us, we're dreading virtual choirs, and later on I'll talk about some of those ideas that are not merely Eric Whitaker. But I think a lot of those kinds of new ways of thinking can give us liberation and frankly, encouragement about what we pursue next. And I think Ethan, Buddy, and Kellery all talked to that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the idea of letting the story be told for us, it really sort of sticks in my mind versus how we become the storytellers. We are the artists and we are the teachers and we are the experts. And so going back to this idea of, you know, all of the things that Ethan reminds us that we can do, we have always advocated for ourselves. We've always advocated for the arts, and we get to tell the story now before somebody else makes that decision for us. The provost at San Jose State University thank God, asked the chair of the music program to provide rationale for how and why we might be able to still meet in person, even in small groups of maybe chamber music of 8, maybe we rehearse outside. But we're lucky that the provost and upper administration wants to hear from us. But if they don't hear from us, they're gonna make decisions maybe without the best information. Kellery, would you maybe talk to this idea of, if we're going to be our own storytellers and we're going to go to our administrators to provide them something, what, as an experienced administrator, what do you want to hear? What information needs to be communicated to administrators?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'm probably maybe a unicorn. I'm not sure. Not a lot of colleagues that I run into that are choral directors also. So that's kind of, I'd love to have more people around me that are doing what I'm doing that were former choral directors. So wink, wink, come on in. But I said it to say, when I'm in meetings, oftentimes what I have to do, not just for choir, but I have to advocate for my entire division. And often it's around data. That's what drives many decisions at colleges. I know that there's a CARES Act that may take up some room in a lot of people's, if you've spent some money, they'll get it back. They won't get it all back perhaps. And not every college or K-12 school will get that. What I would advocate for, if I were you, is to be the answer for your administrator at this point in time. Start connecting what you do with what we've already been asked to do nationwide, which is, emotionally connected, physically distant. We've been doing that for ages and decades. Tell them that you're doing it. They won't know that's what we do. They just think you stand up and you conduct and you get off stage. They don't know, likely, that there's an emotional connection that causes them to get chills and the hair on the back of the neck to stand up. They don't know what all that feeling is coming from. And we can tell that story like nobody else. So I think this is a good time to remind them of the things that we do. And the band, they do it as well. Same thing, further out, maybe yard line to yard line, but it's the same kind of thing. We also need to find ways to widen, I can't say this enough, widen your perspective and not just think of, and I know it feels like it's just happening to you, but the truth is your administrator is going through hell. They truly are, because they're having to go in, perhaps at least the college and university level for sure, and maybe there's a principal out there that feels the same way, and advocate to someone else who may not believe like they believe, even if they do believe in you. And they may not be able to save you, but for the kind of advocacy that gets moving, and that is data. If you can remain relevant in this time, do your whatever you can do digitally. I see that Jeffrey's doing something I thought was really cool at Feel a Place. He's doing an online concert with a backstage pass. That's the kind of stuff that school board members like. And if a school board member likes it, it's likely that you're going to get to stick around because they want, Maya Angelou says, people forget what you say and what you do, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. Make them feel something now. This is the time to make them feel digitally. And then when you get back together, they're not going to forget, because they're going to remember that feeling that you gave them back then, back when everything was chaotic and there was a pandemic, and you helped solve a problem that they thought there was no answer to.
Kellery, I would add, I've been thinking about what I would do if I were in a high school or a junior high, and I love what you said earlier about finding your allies. If I were trying to drive the discussion at this point, in addition to the emotional side of it, I think I would go to my principal and say, here are some of the projected learning chapters, units that we're going to do, and I would do something on physics, the physics of singing. I would do something on art and music. I would do something with poetry and literature. I would do something with architecture, because that's, you're doing Bach, you're studying architecture. I would do something with math and theory and history, and I would work to convince my administrators that what we're doing is going to bring the connections for all of these other areas together. I think music does it in a way that no other class can really say that they do, and it's a great opportunity for us to think outside the box on how we can do those things, in addition to also making sure that they feel something.
Yeah. I think the other thing, and this is something that Buddy brought up at the beginning, we have the challenge with our administrators, but I think a lot of us are already seeing that we're going to have a challenge keeping our students with us through this. And especially at college, we don't know how we're going to be able to hold auditions for ensembles in the fall. And if we don't even have live classes, it was very different at the end of this year to retain the students that had already auditioned and keep them there. And if you're in a high school, what do you do with the 9th graders or 10th graders that are coming in? A lot of this is going to depend on, as it always has, on the students speaking for us. I think a lot of, if I were in a junior high and high school, and actually I teach college and I'm doing this a lot already, I'm offering up to the students in classes now, if the maximum number of kids we can get together in person is 8, what do we do? If we're all online, what would you like to do, right? We need to make sure that the activities that we're doing are fulfilling for them, and it's not the same everywhere. The best thing always to do is to really rely on that student leadership and ask them and get them involved now. I have friends who are already involved in getting their students writing letters to the administration about how helpful music has been and through this period. But yeah, I think developing the curriculum for next year in multiple different ways. All I can really promise my students is that if they sign up for choir, as soon as live choir is available, they will get it. And if they don't sign up, they're not going to. So like there's that hope, right? They stay with us just because they're hoping a vaccine is discovered or whatever allows us to go back to music making. But I think we ought to look a little more about like what are the projects they're going to find satisfying online. I want to throw out one other thing that I've been discovering, and I don't know where you guys are too. I have a lot of projects that I think the students would find very satisfying, but many of them can't complete them because they don't have the technology at home. Or in many cases, I'm asking them to sing and they're home with their parents and they feel kind of uncomfortable singing, like full throttle in their bedroom and recording it. And so it's worth thinking about whether there is some kind of a midway, maybe whether there are some, small rooms where people can go to do this, or whether there are spaces in the community that are safe and, from a virus standpoint, and allowing people to do the digital music making. But that's become a bigger challenge than I would have imagined. And I imagine that's true at so many schools as well. Like that digital education is certainly not a level playing field.
Something that Kellery said a few minutes ago reminded me of our conversation on Saturday when we were chatting. I think, Ethan, you said, now's the time for us to get out there and convince our students and our administrators. And I think you used the term, it's time to fight the fight, which I was like, yes, let's do it. And Kellery, you actually said just to be cautious, though, how you approach administrators, because I think sometimes we get into that assumption that we've got to come up with our fists in the air and sort of say, you're not cutting my program. And of course, administrators are humans too, as it's important to remember, and that we need to start those conversations in a place of trust, in a place of let's figure this out together. Here are the 97 things that I know I can do next year, even if we are online, or even if we're going to be in small groups of chamber music in some way. But I loved what you said, Kellery, last over the weekend about coming to the table with sort of an open heart.
Right, yeah. And I think it's important, especially right now. Everybody's on edge. Everybody is frantic, wondering what next. I imagine this might have been how it went with choir back in 1918. I'm not sure what happened back then. I actually would love to know. But to be honest, if everybody is coming to your administrator with problems, just imagine all day, and it happens, by the way, all email long, all day long, all through the door, everybody's got a problem. What if when you came through, it wasn't a problem, but it was a solution? Maybe you're the one that comes in and says, you know what, I was thinking the other night about how I might be able to do choir and relieve, and I don't shoot me, please, but try to look for perhaps other funding sources for things that you normally get from general fund. Maybe there's a grant somewhere that you say, you know what, I'm going to try to relieve and take the pressure off a little bit right now. And the danger with that is that if you do that, they might think, well, this is how it should be always. So be careful. You have to know who you're dealing with. This doesn't work everywhere with everybody. But if you have a supportive and a trust built with the administration and a board, take this and say, hey, I can help out here. We can get our funding through here. Or since we're not going to be meeting in person, we could probably relax a little bit of this, and so you don't have to spend that. Like I said, that won't work everywhere because somebody might take that and run with it. So be careful. But it's an idea. It's an opportunity for you perhaps to either build or to buttress your relationship. And I like what Buddy said, which was keep those connections alive on campus. You know, that's if you make yourself connected to something that perhaps they feel more important. I mean, it's horrible thought that, you know, for us it's quiet to imagine that we're not as important, but some people just don't think that way. This might be an opportunity to make sure that you get what your end goal is, which is to stick around and keep doing choir.
Yeah, and I actually had a high school teacher colleague who asked not to be named, but said I could share their plan. I actually have met a lot of choir directors that have gone into administration because we have to organize a lot of stuff and do a lot of logistics and do a lot of the work that administrators do just to do our basic job in a way that many teachers don't. I have one teacher that offered to consolidate some of their classes and actually just help the administration with one period a day through the crisis. And as you were said, like administrators are really overwhelmed right now. And maybe it's even something as that basic of a skill set that we're willing to put ourselves on that team to preserve the music program. And maybe we don't offer as many classes a day because you can't make as much of a case that we need to have 9th and 10th grade beginning choir, you know, like there's some of the gradations that maybe you don't want to offer your choral program in the same way that we do before. If we are going towards more or less virtual music making, I'm still trying to decide at Portland State whether choir will be offered next year just for music majors or whether it's still going to be for everybody. The music majors need it to stay on track and to graduate. They need to do something. We're looking at probably having to do chamber music at best. And if we're going to have to coach a whole lot of chamber ensembles, that's going to take a lot of faculty time. So, you know, maybe not everybody gets the same offerings, but depending on what you want to do, maybe you can consolidate, and that can also save money, right? Lots of people can take an online music appreciation section, and it doesn't have to differentiate between your beginning and advanced students in the same way. So you can get them together in one room and save some time or some money. And there are creative solutions. I thank you yeah, we shouldn't always be, or maybe even ever be, adversarial with our administrators.
Right. Yeah, I can add to what Ethan's saying, just the creativity that we are all challenged to make, but also using, comes a lot with, okay, so if we have 8 people, what do we do? If we have only treble voices and 1 changed voice, what do we do? All of those things are exhausting and exciting. And as we've been talking to you and we've been talking to each other, I'm blown away by stuff that's happening. A couple weeks ago, I was like, well, maybe we can make a virtual choir and maybe I can show some music appreciation slides. And now the ideas that you guys have generated is incredible. And I've collected a couple of slides that I can share with you now. Just to give sort of an idea of some of the things that we've been thinking about a little bit in terms of how we get by, like how we make this work. And one of the ways we make this possible is by sharing the workload. It's, as we were just saying, when can we collaborate? What can we use? Where can we get some help? Where can we get a little bit more of the inspiration? A lot of collaborations. We're in a situation where if I don't get a full choir back, I may need to ask the middle school nearby to join me in a creation that is a 2-for-1 that we share with their parents, they share with us, you know, in case I have no people there. My other suggestion is to copy. Julie Dana saved my butt through Molly Peters when my brilliant first idea in desperation was a disaster online. Julie had an idea that Molly told me about. Molly forwarded me what Julie had. I modified it. And suddenly I didn't have to invent something. And that idea was for our students to, and many of you are doing this, create a concert. And the joy that my students have creating these research programs has been incredible. So many of you are bringing in guests to your classroom. And of course, these are all FERPA issues and volunteer issues and all of those things. And you know how to, you know, navigate your way there. But this is such a great time to bring our composers into our classrooms. It's incredible for our students to meet living composers. It's also a really great forum to talk about how they got so rich as composers, and get into the delicate area of what copyright is, and why even sharing our PDFs in these emergencies has an impact. Those are difficult questions, but if you can't afford a gentle honoraria for a composer, what if we collaborate and bring a couple of our classrooms together, again, if it works for FERPA and those kinds of things, to share a visit that way. We can also get by being creative about sharing what you love. And one of the interesting things that we were talking about a couple weeks ago was really missing this summer. For many of us, our summers are not just outside, they are also the time that we create dreams of repertoire. We dig through, we listen, we dream up programs, we dream up concerts. And some of you guys have shared that with your students. I'll confess that there was, and I hope none of my students are online right now, there's a part of me going, well, how would they even find the repertoire? Because apparently I hold it in some little secret cauldron. Instead of recognizing that places like J.W. Pepper have lists grouped by ages and levels with links to things they can listen to. Oh wait, like I do? So I have found, quite accidentally, as so many of you have, that you are when turning over these kinds of quality contributions, these students are excelling in being able to share their passions for what the programming could be, what their rationale for including them, what they love about the music. It's been incredible. And to that end, one of the other things we're missing is getting together for reading sessions. And quite accidentally, some of you have found that the nerdy thing of sharing your audio with everybody's mics on and everybody just sing dorkily at the computer seems to bring joy, especially for sight reading. And, you know, things that I thought, no, we need an ensemble to sight read. I was saying something to one of my colleagues about one of the things that I thought I'd do when I had more time, you know, is maybe I will do sight reading. And I have not incorporated sight reading into my online classes, though I have more time. But that's something that we can bring into our classes, not necessarily as musicianship only, which is so much of what we do, but I have not included that kind of thing. And there's some technical elements to get around. Here's another thing that my groups couldn't do. We don't have a budget to travel to hear a lot of choirs, but I know, as you do, when you take your choir to hear other choirs of their age, not their age, of their level, not their level, something changes. And so setting that up, like curated visiting, is really something. And that can be going to your colleagues on this forum to say, hey, do you have some video you'd be willing to screen share with us on a group project? It's amazing what we see that way. The other thing that I have caught myself not taking time for is sharing listening with the students in the past few years. I remember, and I was telling somebody about, some of you will remember, not all of you, going, I just got this CD of the Robert Shaw Chorale. You've got to listen to it, but get it back to me right away. And, you know, maybe we'd lie on a floor somewhere and just listen over and over and over. I have said in rehearsal, oh, I wish I could play that for you right now. But I'm like, oh, but I don't have a computer here in our rehearsal room, or, oh, I don't have this CD. There's some limitations about sharing audio, of course, but it's amazing when we share that passion with our students, what that means. The other thing that I was telling, I think it might have been Julie Dana, I remember when I started teaching at the college level going, choir, if I could only just show you, I wish I could show you what I've marked in my score. Now things like shared PDFs and Fourscore and all those things, we can do that in real time. And it takes a little planning, but it's amazing. It's amazing to see, what we have. But the other way that I think we're going to get through this, of course, is by being kind to yourself, being very generous to yourself. Some of you, like me, cursed with words that only sailors are known to use the first few weeks. I survived through copious amounts of wine, but also by allowing that, I can't do it all, and my singers can't do it all. It's a new paradigm. We were working on Beethoven 9. I was like, we got the Karus practice things, easy peasy, virtual B9. No, can't do it all. And here's the other thing that I didn't realize until a couple weeks in, and many of you have said the same thing. There is nothing colder for a choral conductor who feeds off the energy of humans than to look out at a half picture sea of muted microphones and some names and a few faces, and think that we are somehow connecting. And some of you, as I have found, we're still connecting. Our students are still somehow feeling our passion. They are believing in our passion for choral music, and they're coming up with some really great things. They're also doing some things that I never expected before. My shy speakers are reading poetry through Zoom. My group leaders, who would never in a big room, are comfortable in groups of 4 in a breakout room. So I'm giving myself a little permission to see some of those things. And I think those are just a couple of ideas on how to sort of bust out of where we are and move forward.
Thank you, Arlie. Yeah, I think that this idea of of sharing all of that with our students and experiencing the things that we maybe don't normally have time for is a tremendous reminder for all of us. I got a message from Paul Kimball, who teaches in the Central Valley of California, who is not only a choir director, but also a French horn player. And he just shared with me that the past month, he's been going out around town and serenading people throughout the town of Stockton and playing his French horn and just playing tunes. And he's doing it socially distant, physically distant from people, and just providing people joy in the music making process and the music sharing process. I think the idea of being kind to ourselves is really important right now, that whether you're working on that virtual choir that you're still trying to get perfect and secret broken here, it's never going to be perfect. But, reminding yourself to kind of go gentle on your own self as well as on everybody else right now, and finding ways to still provide joy musically and through the art to yourself and to others. I loved the idea of going out and singing serenades or playing serenades to the greater community. And Paul would have never had time for that. He was, music directing 3 shows and working at school and doing his church job. And I think this idea of, taking the time for the things that really matter right now is a really important reminder for all of us. I wonder, Kellery, you had a few slides, I think, that you wanted to share. Is that right?
No, I pretty much said it.
You said it. Okay.
Yeah,
great.
I said it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we talked about on Saturday as well is, the idea of getting out and messaging this in a way that is connective to all of our communities. I think about Tina Fey, for those of you who know and remember Tina Fey's amazing book that she wrote, probably it's been 15 years now, called Bossy Pants. Tina Fey talks about the people in her life that she really wants to be around are the people that understand the number 1 and number 2 tenets of being a theater person, and specifically being an improvisational theater person. The first rule of improv in theater is you always say yes. And the second rule is you go one step further and say and. The most fabulous people in the world in my life are yes and people. They are not people who say we can't do this, but they are the people who say not only is that possible, but I'm going to go one step further and I'm going to put this out there in a way that everybody can connect to and everybody can share. And if you have been reading the chat, Lou De La Rosa, who's our current president-elect of the Western region of ACDA, is putting together a task force, and Western Region ACDA I know is pulling together the R&R folks and the presidents, and we're going to have a place where we can put all kinds of resources online. And CCDA is also talking about doing the same thing. For those of you who, whether you're a member of CCDA or not, we're going to be pulling together some roundtables, so some Zoom conference calls like this, but with like-minded groups. So the 4-year and 2-year college groups, and the high school choral people and the middle school choral people. And we're going to be putting together roundtables so people can join and have conversations in smaller groups, because I think we all want to be yes and people, but sometimes we don't know what the and is.
You know, Jeffrey, I'm seeing a bunch of people comment in the chat about the struggles that some of their students are having, and it's heartbreaking. I mean, I've had a couple instances, we've all had those instances where it's just heartbreaking to think of what our students have to go through, and this just compounds that. I just try to remind myself that this is the time when they need us the most, not doing the concert. Now is when they need us to make sure that we have something to offer them. And maybe, you know, doing what Ethan is doing, reaching out to them and saying, your family doesn't support music. How has having this outlet changed your life? Maybe not even now, but just in general. Gathering those support forces going forward is just crucial for them and for us.
And I can jump in on that. I think that's a real key. Our college president encouraged us to consider our classes as where we continue to build community online. And that shift in thinking reminded me, yeah, we work so much to connect with our students. They are not hanging out in our choir rooms. They are not hanging out in the hallways. And they are not dropping in randomly when we're in our offices during lunch hour, or stopping us in the hall when we're just trying to go to the bathroom already. So we've had to create different ways to do outreach. And so I do have students that have gone radio silent, but I've had students that have become much more receptive to one-on-one emailing, because now that's their forum. Many of you are doing the breakout rooms and the connection there. But I wanted to talk too about, you know, Buddy saying, what is choir for us, and what does it mean to you? Because I think having that language helps us recruit. For those of us who will be having choirs, we do want a community. We don't want to leave it to people who are just willing to do some version of what they think virtual choir is. So really reaching out for those kinds of students, helping them name what it is that choir can be, and then capitalizing on that has been a start for recruitment. And I know some of you guys have also talked about ideas in outreach and recruitment.
Ethan, I think you're muted. Oh, we can't.
Is that better?
That's better.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't mean to be a downer. I also conduct a large community chorus in Oregon, and I've been trying to think about creative solutions. In, you know, the first point I think that Buddy started with was that as music teachers, our first and foremost goal is not to provide a concert, it's to provide a musical education. And that really works in the classroom setting at all levels. It's not actually the same mission for a church or community chorus. And it's much harder to figure out activities that are satisfying. And it's also much harder financially, especially for a community chorus like mine. Like, where do we get any revenue from to pay for any of this if we don't have ticket sales? And I'm not sure that I have like the same kind of inspiration to offer there, but I do know that that's a community that hangs together for longer. And I know we have some aging singers, which is a tricky thing, but at least there is that hope that that community can sort of hibernate and still be there, because they're all still part of the community, in which, you know, during this hibernation, a lot of kids are going to graduate from our school community and new ones are going to come in without the opportunity to join. So it is a different thing, but I feel more confident that like my community chorus will be there waiting whenever this is over. And I'm also quite confident that the live audiences who want to come back and hear choral concerts are very much going to be waiting for us when that comes at the end. I was talking yesterday with the music director of our local symphony. I think the professional musical organizations are going to have a much harder time weathering this storm than community choruses. And I guess that's the Jewish part of me just saying it could be worse. I do think, like, while we need all these strategies, a lot of this really is, we understand the value of what we have, and our students do too. Many of our administrators do also, and it's about how do we build a bridge to the other side of this? And we don't know how long that bridge needs to be, but that is really what we are looking for. It's just a bridge. This isn't gone away forever, way longer than we'd like, but just, you know, trying to get to the other side is an important way to think about it. And I think that's why this is so hard for our students, and why so many universities are just going ahead and, you know, just moving online immediately. It's better to have a decision, even if it's a bad one, rather than just wondering what the fall is going to look like. At least then you can plan. You know, it's the same kind of thing. If we can hold out, like, here's the plan, here's how we get to the other side. It does offer people some hope if we can give them an end in sight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the idea of the bridge, we don't know how long, and we don't know when we'll be back together, but that's a really good reminder for all of us. In talking with a colleague the other day, I was reminded, this is not the new normal. I think we have to keep reminding ourselves, nothing about this is normal. And this is not the new normal. We don't know how long we're going to be like this, but at some point, we are coming out of this, and we will be able to make music again together. And we will have live audiences, and we will be in the same classroom, in the same church, in the same community choir with those people. And I think if we can keep sort of reminding ourselves of that mantra, that we are building this bridge and we are going to connect back to that real human need. We have survived pandemics before as people. Singing is the oldest art form there is. People have been singing alone and with others for as long as there have been humans. And I think it's so important. I have to remind myself of this about once a week now. This is not the new normal. And I believe with my whole heart that the people in this virtual room right now are the people that are going to go out and give us the messaging that we all need to hear. I think we tread very lightly when in the public forums where we say, you know, the sky is falling, we can't have choir, I can't do that. The yes and mantra is that yes, if you want to do virtual choirs, you go do it. And if you want to pivot and convert to some music history and some music theory and some sight singing, you go do that. I don't think anybody should be posting publicly that I think virtual choirs are terrible. That's not the same thing. We get it. It's not the same thing, but we are not in normal right now. And so anything that you can do that is going to give people connection and give people cause for hope is okay. Preach it and share it. Stay positive as you can, at least in public forums. We must advocate and we must convince people that there is going to be normal after this, and we are all going to share music together once again. Don't poo-poo those ideas that you don't want to do. It's okay, you don't have to do them, and secretly behind closed doors you can complain about it all you want. Yes, we all need to whine, it's okay. But in public forums, share the stuff that we can do. Be yes and people. It is absolutely critical. Next week and every Tuesday at 3 o'clock for the next few weeks, for a month or so, we'll be back right here. and we will have another wonderful session for you. In the meantime, yes, I didn't give my whole sentence earlier, and I saw the chat and everybody was freaking out. We're gonna have roundtables for community choirs. We're gonna have roundtables for church choirs. We're gonna have roundtables for every sort of constituency group. So don't worry, I didn't intentionally leave anybody out. The California Choral Directors Association is all inclusive, and we are gonna be putting those together in the coming weeks. So please know that all of that's coming. And again, I know Western Region is also planning to do some things as well. I want to say thank you to Dr. Dower and Dr. James and Dr. Sperry and Dr. Longnagar, and say thank you to 200 and some people who showed up today. We need to remember that we can do this, and we are going to come back to normal someday. And for now, stay as positive as you can. We love you all. Thank you, Arlie. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Buddy. Thank you, Kellery.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Jeffrey. That was an awesome pep talk at the end. Now I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
we all need pep talks, all of us. This is hard work. This is hard. These are
It is.
tricky places, fields to navigate, and even the most creative and positive sure need to hear it.
It's emotional work. It's emotionally draining. At the end of every day, I'm just wiped out, and I'm not in front of an ensemble. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's great. Sorry.
No. I never thought I'd be so exhausted just sitting around at a computer.
Right.
I thought our other work was more exhausting, but I'm not convinced anymore.
I've got these fancy, cushy headphones, and my ears actually hurt, like, at the end of the day, just from wearing them for so long.
I bet. Yeah. I really appreciate the contributions of everybody online, chatting, just connecting, sharing. That was really cool to see.
I've got this little book, maybe some of you have it too, What They Didn't Teach You in Choral Methods. And I've been looking for that chapter on the pandemic, but it's not in there. So I have to write that
That's
chapter.
in the second edition.
No, you have to write it, buddy. That's what that means.
Yeah.
We're all going to write it, aren't we?
You need to go back and get the 1920 edition of that book, I guess,
Right.
to figure that one out.
Yeah.
No, it's one of the things I've been thinking about a lot, because like in other, like everyone says music has survived other tragedies before, but like music is usually a huge part of the recovery of humanity from tragedies.
Absolutely.
Like the active participation in music goes way up in wartime or after 9/11 or whatever, and just the fact that like we can't provide what we're used to providing, like when people need it the most, is like the hardest. And yeah, there isn't enough data about what happened. I mean, maybe there is. I mean, I haven't seen an article about it, about how things went on during the Spanish flu. So,
well, I think just about in recent times, you know, the universities across the country, two-year colleges and the universities across the country, enrollments went up during and immediately following the recession in 2008. So the number of people who were maybe unemployed or just were like, you know what, now's the time while the economy stinks to go back to work, or to go back to school rather. And you know, I keep sort of, as the optimist in me, I keep thinking, you know, when we come out of this, I think there are going to be more people who realize, wow, I need music in my life way more than I thought I did.
That's correct.
I agree.
That's correct.
Yeah, I think people, and I think it's not just the communities, but that's a large part of what we do, being together. Many of you guys are in the same boat. I have new students this semester who were unable to perform a single concert together this semester, and they're brand new to choir. That's been a tough community to build, and it's been tough for them to create their passion for the music when they've never been on stage, when they've never had to have that experience, that corporate experience. So yeah, I've had to shift gears pretty quickly on that one. These are, to quote an overused statement, unprecedented times.
Does anyone, including all of you who are still on here and want to type it into the chat, the thing that's bugging me the most is, even though I came up with like really great virtual projects to do, it took like half the quarter to do it. This whole thing about students not being able to sing wherever they live or not having the right technology for it, like that's a really big thing, and I don't have a solution for that right now. Like, I can come up with all of these projects, but what if it's such an unequal playing field that half the students can't participate?
Equity is huge. I mean, it's a massive issue, and our university just put forward a plan of what needs to be done, and it's great ideas, but the dollar signs. How do we come up with the money to support all education?
Yeah.
Money's going to always be an issue, I think, when it comes to the arts. You just have to, I mean, yes, and Jeffrey, yes, we can do it. And how do we do it? I think is the next part of the money question.
Yeah, and then what do you do if you have a kid who's, you know, got plenty of money, but their parents don't want them singing full throttle, you know, like for a voice lesson or for contributing to a virtual choir, or, I mean, you know, and then they go, if they go out in their car, they suddenly don't have any Wi-Fi. I don't know. It's just like, it's just.
I have a couple, you know, typical of the California State University. We have, you know, everybody. It's fantastic, but I have a few students who, you know, in just to pull together a jury recording, you know, it was almost impossible because they don't have a space that they can be in. I had one student who was in a car park, you know, like in a carport outside, and had terrible Wi-Fi, and was just, it took them like 30 different tries to be able to finally upload it to YouTube so that we could see the link. And it's just, it breaks my heart, because I just want, we have the money in this country to give everybody free Wi-Fi, and Apple could provide, you know, an iPad to everybody in the entire California State University system, for instance. Is just, you know, every city at this point should have free Wi-Fi across the country.
Yeah, I think Cypress College did the parking lot idea where they did the physical distancing. They spaced it out and allowed students to come and just sit in the parking lot and be on Wi-Fi there, so that they could have access to it if they didn't have it at home. So
yeah, our college did external Wi-Fi access too, and so kids just drive up, park in the car, and work. Yeah, and that's not everywhere. That's rare.
yeah, true.
Yeah, Portland, actually, the city of Portland got a donation from Nike to have enough Chromebooks to give out to all public school kids. The public schools insisted on it before they would reopen. And they've been doing these like Chromebook giveaways, and they still can't, you know, get everyone to show up and pick them up. And they've also asked all sorts of people to, like, if they're willing to just turn on a free Wi-Fi channel with the like for student use, no password, on their house, just to create extra Wi-Fi in the city. But yeah, that doesn't always like scale up to colleges, and it still doesn't get to everybody. But it was one of the most impressive things I've seen. Like the superintendent of Portland Public Schools has equity as like a huge hot button, but that's just like one city in the state. You know, it's a large school district.
Yeah. And the equity issues are so, you know, you're mentioning them all, and all of our students and public school teachers see this, especially for students that have been assigned to the choir class that did not choose it, whose family does not support them. I mean, yeah, there's, beyond all the various barriers, there's some that just are, hey, I don't even want to be here. And those were battles when we were in a group together in person, and those will continue.
Can you imagine going through high school or college and doing all of your work on a phone? I've got many students who are doing their entire coursework on a phone. I don't know. Yeah, there's got to be some solutions for that going forward. It's great. I'm seeing some people saying that there's really some good solutions out there that districts have stepped up, like Portland has. People have in Portland. So, but it's an equity thing. Not everywhere's going to have that.
Yeah.
Right, and I asked from Equity right at the beginning of this whole thing for about $200,000 to buy Macs for checkout for our students in digital media and in commercial music, and we got it based on equity, but it was an equity issue.
Yeah, our department's struggling right now with, so if we go online, I'm not buying hard copy music, I'm buying digital copies to get to students or whatever, or I'm asking students to subscribe to online subscriptions. How do we get that money? Because now the textbook cost is a subscription to Sibelius cost or something like that. So all of those things that we're navigating, we've never had to worry about that. but financially, those are major barriers for our students, for some of our students.
Well, and to that point, I did have to have a conversation with our faculty about remembering that Adobe and all those guys, Finale, they were giving it away for like 4 months, but in
Yep.
the fall, the giveaway is over, I believe. And if they've gotten accustomed to using it, they need to put that in the budget and make that a request now before
Yep.
the is developed on July 1st when the fiscal year starts. So that's something to consider as you move forward with how you're going to do things if you've been using it to think about moving forward.
Yeah, and where are you going to find the resources? I mean, for those schools that rely on all of their funding coming from their parent booster clubs, you can have wine night with your parent booster club, but how do you do your fundraisers and what are you funding? I mean, that's not a worry that I have, and I really feel for those schools that are those teachers that are wrestling with some of those challenges.
Jeffrey, can you talk about how you conceptualize the concert that you have coming up?
Oh yeah.
I found out about it. I mean, you didn't ask me to do this or anything. I just saw it and I thought it was a great idea. So can you talk a little bit more about that and what you were planning to do with that?
Sure. Yeah, I actually I met so this is a fairly new tech company, at least to the U.S. And I met the woman virtually a couple of weeks ago via Charlene Archibek, who knows everybody. And Charlene kind of put us together. This woman started a company that is in India. She's Indian American, and she started this company as kind of the Ticketmaster of India for sporting events. And of course, it went global, but of course it didn't take off here because we already have so many huge companies like Ticketmaster who make tons of money on our sporting events and music events. But then about 2 months ago, they realized there was a way to maybe connect in some other platforms like a Zoom, fully integrated into their platform, and maybe create, sort of imagine that the platform is kind of like Ticketmaster plus Zoom plus Facebook Live. And the quality is better than Facebook Live. So you can see stuff can be streamed right into people's homes, obviously on their computers, and they want people to eventually be putting it onto their like TV screens so that it feels more like an actual concert. But the idea is that eventually we could be monetizing what we do. And for when we come back to sort of real life, for the normal times, you could actually sell your 300 tickets to your regular concert, plus maybe people all over the globe could watch and have the virtual experience of your concert, and it could be live streamed, and you could charge a reduced ticket price. You don't have to charge anything, but that's how they make their money in order to host it all. They don't charge you any fee, but they on top, or up front rather, but they take a percentage of the ticket sales. So, you say $5 is my ticket price, and then they take their percentage and your organization gets the rest. And so Charlene kind of pushed me in that direction, and I checked it out, and I talked to the woman, the sort of founder of the company, and said, let's do a test run, and maybe in the fall we'll actually be able to get some new content where we maybe are in groups of 8 or so. I'm still thinking positively that maybe we'll be able to meet in person in small groups outside or however, and we can get some new content. But in the meantime, I've pulled some content from our December recording session that we had right as the semester ended. And then we did do one virtual choir, so I'm going to premiere that piece there as well. So it's some pre-recorded stuff, and then the virtual choir piece. And then after the concert's over, then there's you don't have to log out of that and log into Zoom. It's all integrated, and people will be able to join for a backstage pass. And I've invited the composer, Melissa Dunphy, for the world premiere to come and join me, and we'll have a little chat. And I've invited all my students to come. And so it'll be, I wanted to do some kind of culminating activity for my choir. They wanted to have a concert, and I thought, well, it'll be what it'll be, but at least we can have something. So that's kind of how that came about.
Excellent thinking. I thought it was brilliant.
And I think I'm allowed to share this, but it's a new platform, of course, but the San Francisco Symphony has been in negotiations with them. So this is a platform that very well may take off pretty quickly. From what the already at
starting pitch 1 and 2 and 3.
Buddy, are you practicing? But the San Francisco Symphony is already at like conversation number 4 in negotiations. So I think that it's possible that this could be something when we do come out of this that people would continue to use. Who knows? I'll find out on Friday if it's successful or not, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be an interesting time because people are, especially in the past few weeks, have been getting so much free content on, on the internet. That's always the question. We always have so much free stuff on the internet. What are we willing to pay for?
Right. And my suggestion was, I didn't feel comfortable charging at all. And a couple people convinced me that we should just put the $5 tag on it just to see if people will pay for content. And if it's a huge flop, then they won't, then we know that it's not going to be a thing. But they're not just getting the
concert,
sort of the 2D concert experience or the YouTube clip, if you will. They are getting the interactive part too, is what the founder convinced me of, that there's going to be that conversation with composer and conductor and singer, so that yeah, if anybody in this room wants, I can provide I'm not sharing all this to promote it or to charge money. We're not trying to make money on it, but I do have some free discount codes so that people can log in for free if anybody is interested in checking it out. I'm still learning about it myself, so.
Yeah, this may be something, and I was going to suggest as well. Some of our colleagues will go, "Oh, you should use a cappella or something," and really downloading it is not the same as going, "Let's screen share and show me how you use it." So if you're ever wanting to screen share how you're using some of that, that would be super keen and cool.
Oh my God. Hi, Julie Dana, I see you down there. Oh, wow.
Well, I appreciate all of you being here. Actually, I appreciate everybody being here, and panelists, thanks for giving up an hour and 15 minutes of your time today. I needed the conversation for sure, and I think a lot of our folks logging on needed to hear it too. So I really appreciate all of you.
Thanks for providing these forums. I mean, you just jumped right on it, and CCDA started putting these webinars together, and it's been really helpful to stay connected because pretty isolated in these rooms, and this has been great. So,
yeah,
bravo.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm going to unmute everybody for the last 20 seconds before we log off in case people want to shop and stuff. So, morning, you're being unmuted.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
Good
Stephen and
Everybody.
Buddy. Awesome to see everybody.
Great to see all of you. We should all sing something. We know how satisfying it is on Zoom.
Exactly.
That's also.
Fugue.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Good
And
luck.
ACDA board. Thank you, guys. Arlie, love you.
Thanks, Julie.
Valerie, it was really wonderful to meet you. Thank
Because
you.
even wearing a mask doesn't deter the spread of it. When
I love you, Liza.
you